Talk with Brandy and James. I'm Brandy.
And I'm James, and this is our podcast looking at aspects of mental health and some of the challenges living cross-culturally. And we're excited to start today. And Brandy, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Brandy Welterlin. My husband and I work with SIL. We've been with SIL for 20 years. Just got the email confirming that.
Do you get a
for
prize?
My anniversary. I think we do. I don't know what it is. I hope it's great, though.
I will bet you it's either a certificate or a pen.
I think it's a pen or plaque.
Ooh,
maybe.
No.
I know, right? Or maybe like a ship in a bottle or something like that.
That would be the dream.
That's what we're hoping for. So, yeah. So we've lived in the Black Forest for the past almost 9 years now. So, yeah.
And before that?
we were in Central Asia. So a little country in Central Asia. We were there for 7 years. And we did a small stint in Russia, just learning Russian language and such. So, yeah. But we've been with Eurasia area pretty much this whole area of the world since we joined our organization. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. How about you guys?
So James Covey, I'm a counselor. I've been serving with SIL, and I just got my 10-year email notice that I will have a pen in the mail to somewhere in the U.S. at some point. So
Nice.
Pretty excited about that. I started out spending a year at JARS, which is in North Carolina, counseling with a counseling center there. And then I spent 5 years in Kenya, a year in North Africa. And currently my wife and I are settled in Spain, where much like everywhere else in the world, we're all kind of dealing with restrictions and rules and trying to figure out how do we and how does everybody else live in the midst of 2020.
Right.
Just a year we all want to blank out of our minds forever.
Right. I mean, it's been great for all the memes and GIFs and, skits on Saturday Night Live, but, otherwise it's been pretty awful. So,
and except for the introverts. I know some serious introverts that have just been in heaven for since March.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, my husband's quite the introvert. So he's like, nothing's really changing for me. I'm doing great, man. So
What's yours, Myers-Briggs?
I don't know. Probably
extrovert.
Probably ENFP. If it's opposite IST, probably ENFP. It's probably like, how did you end up with the organization?
Exactly. That's what mine is as well. So It actually makes sense that two ENFPs are doing a podcast.
I think so. Yeah. I was so excited about it. I was like, yes, we're going to do a podcast. If we talk about Enneagrams, what is yours?
7 or a 2. And it's like, I don't know. I've done the test a bunch of times. It's always tied, which means I need to pick. And I can't, which probably tells me which one I am. But anyway.
Wait, what is Ellie?
Same.
Okay. All right.
What's yours?
I'm high on 7 and 9. A little bit of 4 in there too. So yeah.
7 would fit really well with ENFP. We should definitely do a podcast on Enneagram.
Oh, that'd be really fun. That'd be really, really fun. Tracy's a 5. As a side note, I was listening to a podcast about Enneagrams the other day where readers were writing in, or listeners were writing in about their different Enneagram types. This gal's like, yeah, I'm married to a 5. And before we got married, he had silent Saturdays. I just burst out laughing. Tracy's like, what's so funny? I'm describing you.
The best part is, to somebody that doesn't know what Enneagram is and just hears people shouting out numbers all the time, it must be the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, seriously.
It's like a math club that they're not a part of.
It's like, I'm a 7 wing 6. Like, what's the wing thing?
So we're recording this in November 2020, and what's kind of the latest coronavirus situation in Germany?
Yeah, so we're on what they call a soft lockdown. I'm doing air quotes now, soft lockdown. Whereas in April and May, there's a little bit of a stricter lockdown when the first surge of cases started. So back then, they really strongly suggested everyone stay home. Unless they absolutely had to. There was no, that wasn't required that you stay home. As you can probably go talk about where you guys live, that wasn't required that you stay home. It was just strongly suggested. You weren't supposed to be out in public with more than one person from a different household. Restaurants and bars were closed, that sort of thing. So now, we couldn't cross the borders. The borders were closed, only for work reasons. You had to have like a certificate or permit or something like that. So now it's a soft lockdown, whereas restaurants and bars are closed. You can do takeout. So what's soft about it? Because there's still the things like you can be with up to 10 people from 2 households. So if you have 2 large households, you can be together, I guess.
So it's a 6 and a 4, but if you each have like 3 kids, you're out of luck.
You got to leave some people home. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's it. Like there used to be at the grocery store, like a line, like a really big sign that has like all the rules for the grocery store. That's not there anymore, but there is like a counter at the grocery store where like the maximum capacity and it counts people as they're going in and out, things like that. And face masks are required. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think the hope was, again, it's back in April, that this was going to be like, yeah, we're going to get through this in a couple of weeks. And so looking at more of the long haul now, which we'll probably touch on in a bit, that something that's going to be with us for a while. And whenever things do get back to whatever normal is, it's going to be a different normal too. So just living with that reality.
Right.
What about you guys?
Yeah. So in March, April, it was totally locked down. Kids weren't allowed to leave their houses or apartments for 2 months. So we're not hard. Oh my gosh. Glad we were in the States at the time.
Yeah.
But now it's not that severe, but people are told they have to stay in their cities. So our little village, our pueblo, we're not supposed to leave at all.
Okay.
There's a curfew in the evenings. You have to be home by, I think, 10. Most restaurants are closed by 6 or 7, something like that. But you can still get outside and get exercise, which is really nice. Go to the grocery store. So there's kind of freedom of movement within the city, but it's certainly not normal. And I think that's one of the big points of what we're talking about today is just almost every aspect of our lives is not normal.
Right.
From how we do our day to day, where we're going. I mean, having to wear a mask, which really isn't that big a deal. Like you can wear a mask and it not interrupt your day so much, but so many of the other things are really changed things. Yeah,
they really have. And it's a strange thing thinking about to January 2020 and how like I'll listen to podcasts or like watch TV shows or things like that were all filmed before, this became like a worldwide pandemic. And I want to go like, oh no, you don't know. You don't know what's coming. It's like, it really has impacted so much. It's around the world too. Like in a sense, there's this shared experience, which is this like sort of camaraderie with people. Like this has happened. This has affected people across, around the world. That we're all living and working through this together. And it also like, on the other hand, it really highlights the differences in the haves and have-nots. People who are able to social distance or able to work from home. And there's a lot of the world that can't do that as well. And so it's having lots of levels of impact in different parts of the world too.
Yeah. And it's always running. Like somebody described it to me as your computer, the more tabs you have open on your internet browser, the slower your computer runs. And it's just a memory drain. Like my MacBook will give me notices and it's like, you need to close these pages because they're, really draining your memory. And it's the same thing with so many different parts of COVID that are just running on our mind all the time. Like what's going to happen next in terms of restrictions? What do I need to do to prepare? Hopefully no more panic buying toilet paper. That was a thing.
Yeah.
But this just kind of a little bit of low level anxiety that's causing an energy drain that I don't think people have really accounted for.
Yeah. It's like this hum that's always there.
Right.
And in a way you get used to it. But it's also taking a toll that we're not realizing. Someone explained it to me once. Is like sitting at the light and you have your foot on both the gas and the brake. So you're not going anywhere, but your engine's revving. And so your mind's just continuing to go too. So it does take a toll on, just how you're doing. I liked when you wrote your article about why we're so tired. You mentioned using this like sort of technique called a container. And I wondered if you could explain that a little bit as we're juggling, you have all these tabs open and there's like, we almost get to a point where we're used to that too. And our brains start to get used to functioning that way too. And so I like this idea that the container can help us step back from that and sort of have a place for anxiety and like sort of you can use it like as a physical representation too of what you can do with what's on your mind. If you want to explain that a little bit.
Yeah, because it's really hard to turn those tabs off. I mean, your brain doesn't quite work like, oh, I just need to turn that thing off.
Yeah.
Even the most compartmentalized engineer that's out there is still having trouble turning some of these things off.
Yeah.
Because in the reality, there's an element of COVID that's hitting all aspects of our life, from our physical health to our mental health to our emotional health to our spiritual health. So the container exercise is one way that you can kind of use your imagination to help turn off a part of your brain. So I'll walk you through it because I think it's really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And it's kind of imaginative. So anybody listening that wants to participate, you can be a part of this process as well. So kind of close your eyes if you're comfortable, or just kind of stare at one space on the ground or the wall. And I want you to, in your mind, picture some sort of container that you can put stuff in. It's all in your imagination. I've had people use shipping containers or pirates' treasure chests, and one girl used the whole moon because the thing you needed to store was so big. Mm-hmm. So in your case, Brandy, when you can really visualize and picture a container, describe it to me.
Okay. Well, it's something like my container is like probably something you could have like a letterbox or something like that, but it's really cute because that's important to me. So it probably has like a lot of.
Can you lock it? It's really important that you can lock your container.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, got a key for it. Mm-hmm.
Great.
So it's like shade. It's like in a letterbox shade, and it has like lots of flowers on it. It's really like flowers and like really colorful things too. So so I could put it like, have it sitting like right in front of me right now.
All right. So I want you to picture your container. If you're listening, you can even pause for a second to really get to a place where you can visualize it. It's one of those things that takes practice. Yeah. And I want you to picture opening the lid. And now think of something that just represents all of the stuff related to coronavirus. It could be a shape, an object, a color even. And when you really can visualize something well that just kind of enraptures all of this part of COVID, describe it to me.
Okay. All right. Well, this is just what came to my mind, but I'm thinking of like a ball of like black duct tape. I was originally thinking about, I first mentioned it, like the picture of the COVID virus that has become like so familiar now, the red thing sticking out.
Yeah, right.
I'm settling on is like a ball of duct tape, just black duct tape. How you just kind of like take it, you kind of like wrap it around each other, and it gets kind of crinkly. It's in the shape of a ball, but it has like these. It's not really smooth. It has like these little edges to it and stuff too. So I think it would be like probably in the shape of my hand, or as big as my hand is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So picture holding on to that ball, that item. You may pass it back and forth between your hands, and when you're ready, kind of put it into your container. Pause for a moment, make sure you visualize it there, and then close the lid whenever you're ready and lock it.
All right.
Be helpful to incorporate a prayer and a way of saying, God, I give this to you right now. I don't have to think about it all the time. Sometimes I will, but right now I don't. So I'm giving it to you and asking that you help me leave it in this container until the time is right.
Yeah.
And then, picture somewhere in your imagination where you can store that container. It might be in your house. It might be at your office.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it up on a shelf.
We use a container exercise a lot of times in trauma counseling because when you're dealing with difficult stuff from the past, you don't have to deal with it all the time, but it's hard to just turn that off. So,
yeah. I really like the idea that it both gives you permission to kind of sit with for a time, to sit with the things that are really heavy for you, that are on your mind a lot. And it also gives you permission to step away from it as well. And you know that you can come back to it later at a different time, but you have permission to step away from it for a while too. So yeah, it's a good visual.
It's definitely helpful when you think that, I mean, you even said it earlier, like, it's not like this is about to be over.
Right.
Like, we need to really be thinking, what is our long-term sustainable strategy? Because life's not going to be exactly like it was before.
Right. Right. It's like you think about it like on a couple different levels, like on the day to day now, but like what's going to help me both day to day now, but also in the long term too, of how can how I'm interacting with the situation, how I'm interacting with life and living my life. What is working, what's not working for me for the long term as we're dealing with this too. Yeah. Um, I appreciate also there's another, we'll get back to the article you're talking about. I'm thinking about the energy drain
Mm-hmm.
Of COVID and of living life with COVID. And that I think sometimes we look for things that are measurable and we look for specific events to say, okay, well, I feel this way because of this and this makes sense. And with COVID, it could be a lot of smaller things that do build up that we don't always give it the attention that it needs, or we don't give ourselves the permission to recognize the energy drain that like the toll that it takes on us too. But it is there, even if it's not something you can always point to and say, oh, okay, well, I can see that, I can see that. I mean, there is like the big COVID, but also it's the daily things, the daily losses, the things that we're dealing with too.
Right. And I mean, it's just so hard to account for it. And that's part of the reason we're tired. You know, as I talk to people, I don't have the energy I used to. I'm having trouble concentrating. I sit down to read a book and I look at the same page 10 times and nothing sinks in. You know, those are all kind of the evidences we have that there's a cost for all of this on us. It's just this cumulative impact and kind of extended.
Right.
You know, a lot of crises they're time sensitive. It'll be an event and you, even in the midst of it, might know that it's going to be over soon. And you kind of survive and push forward and your body takes over, your adrenaline picks up. And in a lot of ways, you make it to the end because you see the end coming. Whereas I think there's an element of just physiological cost of us living on adrenal load a little bit. And eventually that stress is just increasing the cortisol levels in our bodies. And people are really noticing it now. And I think they're just really white. And
yeah.
Especially if work is an important part of someone's identity, all of a sudden now you're less productive, which means you're probably trying even harder, even though you're already tired and having trouble concentrating. And it's a difficult cycle.
Yeah, it really is. It is. And I wonder too, you have these advances with technology, like, okay, Zoom is like the best thing and the worst thing probably for a lot of people now. Like, whoever created Zoom or whoever has stock in it is probably really loving life right now. But it makes so much more possible that you know you have to step back and say, okay, well, it's possible, but what are the costs of it too? And we have these ways that we can meet and carry on, but there's also a toll those things too. And so like the whole idea of what does productivity look like in this environment now. So the whole idea of productivity and expectations, and we have these tools that can help us to stay in contact and stay in touch too. What does that impact on us as well?
Right.
Yeah.
Zoom. Yeah, there's a cost for Zoom too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there on Zoom fatigue and some of the things that are causing it, from the fact you're not supposed to be staring at yourself for 8 hours a day, the loss of this kind of interpersonal relationship that you actually get something out of. Some of the top companies in the US 5 months ago were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We're going to go to all Zoom and never again pay for office space. And now they're all, going back on that and saying, actually, we're less productive now. Yeah, it's easier and it's certainly cheaper, but they're actually now starting to measure what some of the cost is of everybody being virtual.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we stick to the productivity evaluation. How much stuff did I do today? How many things did I get translated? How many meetings did I have? How many papers did I write? Whereas it's probably not the best monitor right now because we're tired, because we're a little more worn out. We actually need to be paying a little more attention to our body and our own health as a monitor of where we're at, as opposed to just productivity. Like, am I
Right.
getting enough sleep at night, or am I way oversleeping or way undersleeping?
Right. 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 And
Did I
kind
get
of touch.
exercise this week?
Right. Right. And what things, you were mentioning in Spain how the lockdown was pretty strict as far as people even being able to leave their house. So ideas of normal and exercise and things that we would do for self-care just weren't able to work. And so like how can we shift that and continue to move in the direction of like taking care of ourselves, but having like looking at it from a different perspective too. Like,
Right.
okay, I can't get out and run. Um,
Well, it's the same
but
problem with Zoom. I need people, but yet I'm totally worn out by being on the computer all day.
right,
I guess
right.
there's no win,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially
Yeah,
when it's your only way of connecting to people.
right. So when you have that, when you have people who are in a way like connecting virtually, but also not connecting and feeling more isolated, what are some ideas that you have that can help people sort of identify that and work through it?
Probably some balance, right? You might need to have
Mm-hmm.
a day of no Zoom, because
Yeah.
honestly, you need to not look at yourself for 24 hours and get some freedom for your brain. One
Mm.
of the things people are saying is actually go back to making phone calls.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
I
Okay.
can't I can't even remember the last time I just made a phone call was.
Right. Right. I mean, the thought of that was like, what's a phone call?
Yeah, yeah. Why would I not use FaceTime or Zoom?
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Even in the
Yeah.
context of like a normal conversation, we really don't stare at each other for the whole time. Like, that would be so awkward.
I know, right?
I
And when
can
you feel
see
like,
I can see your shoulders up. Imagine if I was so close to you in physical proximity that we were only staring at each other's shoulders and face. That would be
Mhm.
so awkward.
No personal space at all. Yeah.
None. And that's what Zoom's
Yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also like, you're working beside each other. So you're not like doing this intense eye contact all the time either.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Or I'll
Yeah.
stare at the little camera because I want it to look like I'm looking at people sometimes. And then I'm like, wow, I've stared at
Mm.
this little green light for like 30 minutes, which is also weird.
It really is.
Can't be healthy.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, so it's like it's definitely something to consider to like look at yourself and think, okay, is this does this have an impact on me? I really like some of the things you mentioned, like taking days off, or like even if you have a break between Zoom calls, being intentional about not being on your computer or on any kind of device, be intentional about, just connecting with nature somehow or cooking or doing things like that. Just something to direct your mind in a different way too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting as different as possible. And you might even need to figure out, maybe I can do 5 hours of Zoom a day and that's manageable or sustainable. Maybe it's 3,
Hmm.
maybe it's 6. And then you say, well, I need some people interaction. I need to spend time with my family. That's important. So you say, well, that means I can only do, 4 hours of Zoom related work stuff because I need at least 1 hour of other stuff, connecting with friends, connecting with family,
Hmm.
and kind of holding yourself accountable, having somebody else, a spouse or a friend, hold you accountable to actually how much are you spending on Zoom specifically, and then even on the computer, and how are you balancing that?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea of having someone to help you think about balancing it too. Yeah. Because sometimes we're not always the best at seeing that ourselves and seeing like, being proactive and taking those steps ourselves, but having someone else who can see us and recognize our life, recognize our pattern, say, hey, seems like you've been on Zoom a lot. Why don't you go for a walk or something like that?
I'm sure your husband Tracy's like this, where he'll probably be in meetings with the same people a whole bunch, and like at the end of a week is like, I saw you like 16 times this week. One of us, we are not taking breaks.
Exactly. Exactly. And for him, like he's an introvert, but also, yeah, Zoom definitely has its costs for him. And he's pretty good. He'll schedule um, bike rides. He'll go mountain biking if he has an hour or an hour and a half between meetings. He'll do what he can with that time to step away from the computer and stuff. So he recognizes the limitations of that too, what it does to him. So,
and there's definitely this element, we need to take a step back and think about how to take care of our whole body. So
yes. Yeah.
the relational part, the physical part, the mental, the spiritual, each one may need something different.
Right.
I talked to somebody the other day who hasn't been to an in-person church since March. And I realized Ellie and I were talking about it, like, we're going to have to like get used to that again. Sundays, waking up, going to church, being a part of that process. Like, we got to like retrain ourselves, because we just kind of like jump on whenever we want because it's pre-recorded and we do our own, our own music time, and it's just funny.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you see the memes or people like, yeah, I'm good. Like when the people say, hey, church is open again. They're sitting on the couch with their coffee. Yeah, I'm good. It's cool, man. It brings up this good point that the effects of, say, this, like living with COVID or any crisis, affect the whole body. It's not just psychological or mental or spiritual, but it really is a whole body thing to be aware of. And a lot of times stress and anxiety will affect us physically as well. And I would just encourage people to take a step back and notice what's going on inside them physically as well. Like simple things like, how are you holding your shoulders? What's happening with your jaw? Just sit with yourself for a bit and just think about, where is there tension? Just listen to your body. Where do you tend to carry tension? Is that happening right now? And those clues can help us sort of understand how we're handling things. Like, are we getting close to this edge where we don't have any margin? Is our body telling us that? Or are there things we could do proactively to sort of bring down the stress and the tension too, so that we're not, operating at margin, we're getting headaches and stuff, our stomachs are clenched, or we're having like different kinds of issues too.
Yeah, on the spiritual side, I started meeting with a spiritual director back in June, I think. Just because I was feeling a bit dry, and I know for me it's not having that kind of community. That's a really important part of how I've just patterned my life, and I found it really helpful. We meet once a month, and sometimes we don't really do a lot, but sitting and listening, and he's invited me into some different processes, which has been really cool.
Something I've been trying to just explore more myself is the idea of mindfulness, and being mindful with my thoughts, or emptying my mind, or being mindful of my breathing. And what it does, like you mentioned cortisol levels earlier, is like we get to this point where like the hum is just going constantly. And taking time just to sit and focus on breathing and focusing on the here and now can really help like lower the cortisol levels and help you to be present in the moment, but also recognize what God's doing in the moment too, like his presence in the situation, whereas we tend to pile on so much mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And there can be just a real gift of being able to be silent with God too. Sometimes we want it to be measurable. We want to have our quiet time that we're like, we journal, then we pray this way, then we do this, and we do this too. And I think there's so much value in just sitting in silence with God too. It's definitely a practice that takes, for those of us who are used to just going and have our minds going, it's a practice, but I think it's pretty beneficial.
And there's resources available. Like, you don't have to figure this stuff out, because I know some people are so tired to try to think of something else to do is also exhausting. It's what we're actually commanded to do, is allow others to help us. Like Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way fulfill the law of Christ. We, I think, most often think of it about us helping other people, but there's a 50-50 responsibility in this, that we also need to be able to receive help. Like, you're not on your own. You don't have to go at it alone. There's such a strong kind of ethos, especially in Western culture, about you got to do it alone.
Sure. There's a real beauty in coming along beside each other in community during these times too. And like you said, carrying each other's burdens and helping each other in this. So we're really not meant to do this alone. Like, in the best of times, we're not meant to do this alone.
Right.
So, and now we have like, some really hard stuff going on. And so it's an opportunity to have this beautiful experience of helping each other and encouraging each other and carrying each other's loads as we're figuring this all out. On that note, I was thinking about, we have colleagues and people around us that are different, various life stages. And I'm just thinking about those who are, don't have family close to them, or are single colleagues too, that it would just be really helpful for us to be, I think, especially mindful of them right now. I was talking to a friend of mine and she's like, I just miss hugging people. I was like, yeah, I can hug my husband and chase my son around and hug him, even though he doesn't like that. But, there's people in my house that I can hug. But, I take that for granted. And I think it's really helpful to think about our single colleagues and how some of these challenges can be like, especially hard for them right now too.
You just walk around holding on to yourself to try to get some a sense of it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, what do you do to
a weighted blanket?
Oh yeah, weighted blanket. Oh, those are wonderful. Do
you have one? No.
Our daughter has one and she says it's just amazing. So
that's awesome. I just figure it's never going to be worth carrying. I have to figure out how to get one here.
Well, I know, right? It takes up all the luggage space and weight. Oh my gosh. So we got it in the States when she went to college. I just remember trying to help her get it on her top bunk in her dorm. It was it's just it was just, they were heavy, hence weighted blanket. But it's we got it up there eventually. But yeah, things to consider. Giving our single colleagues space to talk about that, the uniquenesses that they're experiencing right now too. I think it's helpful.
And then initiate, especially if people are finding, hey, I've got a little bit of extra energy or capacity, or actually I'm doing great, hadn't changed my life that much, then, maybe you're the one that actually needs to initiate. Because sometimes that's what takes all the extra work isn't, oh man, do I have the energy to initiate? I'm already worn out. Nobody's reaching out to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just so exhausting that nobody wants to actually do that part of it.
Yeah, you don't want to be the one that's like, hey, look at me. Hey. I want someone to come up here and spend time with me. You want people to reach out to you.
Right.
And recognize you too. So I was thinking about the people who maybe lockdown hasn't been a big deal to them, which are the introverts who aren't they're not going to reach out anyway.
That's true.
God bless them. So
there's this quote by Brene Brown that says, one of the greatest barriers to connection is the cultural importance we place on going it alone. Somehow we've come to equate success with not needing anyone. Many of us are willing to extend a helping hand, but we're very reluctant to reach out for help when we need it ourselves. It is as we've divided the world into those who offer help and those who need help, when the truth is we need both.
And there's actually not weakness in needing help. But I think a lot of times our Western culture will attribute weakness to that.
Other cultures as well, because there's this shame element of I can't do it, or I'm failing, which of course it's not failing, but that's kind of a underlying message there.
Yeah, that's true.
So as we kind of wrap up, I've got one more quote. You'll find out that I truly love quotes.
Okay.
And when it just comes to being present and to listening, this one to me is really spot on. And it's by George Eliot. And it says, oh, the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person. Having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but pouring them all out just as they are, chaff and grain together, certain that a faithful hand will take and sift them, keep what is worth keeping, and with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away.
It just makes you go, yeah. That's really good. One final thought I have is give yourself grace as you're grieving, as you walk through the complications of COVID. We often try to compare our grief, or I don't have it as bad as this person, or why am I feeling this way? Try to give yourself the space and the grace as you're experiencing this right now.
Thanks so much for being here. See you next time.
Yeah, sounds great.